Copyright. Copyright Tempting Conner. Copyright C. 2018. This book is a work of fiction. The names, characters, places, and incidents are the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemble to actual events, business establishments, locales, or persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. All rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic, mechanical, photocopying, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of both the copyright owner and the publisher. The only exception is brief quotations in printed reviews. The scanning, uploading, and distribution of this book via the internet or via any other means without the permission of the publisher is illegal and punishable by law. Please purchase only authorized electronic editions and do not participate in or encourage electronic piracy of copyrighted materials. Your support of authors' rights is appreciated. Published in the United States of America. Copyright C. 2017. Victoria Pinder Love in a book, all rights reserved. Series information. Series information tempting. Series tempting. Gabe tempting. James tempting. Harry tempting. Navid. Chapter 1. Olivia Hawke put her book down and for 1 second imagined that she was a nanny to some imagined child, because then Prince Conner Udine might possibly fall in love with her. Not that Conner had a child and she was not a nanny, but she was in his castle. She glanced out at the town below from the huge glass windows. The book she read really let her imagine a way that a prince might somehow love her, a commoner. She sighed and went to her laptop. It was time to get back to working on her book blog affiliate links and write the review. She glanced out another royal window at the Adriatic Sea and sighed again. For prison, she had hit the jackpot. Okay, technically this was a protection service, not an actual prison. At the moment, it felt like a distinction without a difference. A knock at the door made her stand. She lowered her head and imagined for a second Conner. If somehow Conner walked in there, kissed her senseless, and asked her for her virginity, she'd say yes. It would never happen, though. She was the boring, dependable Hawke that wore her hair in a ponytail most of the time, while her sister, Scarlett, dazzled the world with her brains and beauty, starting her own makeup line. Olivia blogged about books and had never discovered a passion for anything beyond reading. Unlike her sister, she didn't have the confidence to turn her passions into a business. Come in. The old door creaked open enough for her to see who it was. Olivia tried to tamp down her disappointment when she saw it was only Mikkel. The elderly statesman and royal advisor was nice enough, but nothing like the handsome, sexy prince. The royal prince formally requests your presence, Miss Hawke. Seriously? The image of Conner unbuttoning her plain shirt and releasing her breasts played out in her mind. Clearly, the romance in the novels she blogged about were getting the better of her. She coughed and tightened her loose ponytail. Why would Conner suddenly need to see me? It's not my place to say, miss. At least he hadn't mentioned that he was a prince and should be called that to his face. Under normal circumstances, she would respect that, but he was introduced as Conner and her brother's friend. She learned his title after, so it was hard to defer now. A conversation with a real person might be nice. She hadn't really had one in weeks, except on the phone to her mother. Olivia rubbed the goosebumps forming on her arms, and her heart surged even as her eyes narrowed. His Royal Highness has left me alone for weeks and ensured I had bodyguards if I dared go outside. We've enjoyed having you stay with us. Mikkel bowed and tapped on his suit lapel. Her mind raced. Enjoyed. The past tense of the sentence left only one conclusion. Oh, the threat is over? I can move back into my condo? With the turn of his heels, she assumed she was right. She followed Mikkel out of her room, down to the hall toward the main part of the house where all the wings met. The palace was far bigger and more opulent than any home she had grown up near, and there were plenty of glitzy, nouveau riche types wanting to show off their Miami mansions. No one, including her family, had anything like this. Life-sized portraits stared down at her as she and Mikkel passed the triangular windows. The red carpet underneath her feet that covered the marble floor was thick and hushed all footsteps. Near the tapestry of a knight fighting a bull, Mikkel pointed toward Connor's game room. "Please go inside." "Mikkel, you've been my friend. Thanks for everything." She smiled and walked through the door he opened for her. Once she went home, no one would open doors for her. The last time she was in this room was the first night she came to Montina Castle, and Connor told her to stay out of sight in her room. In the days that followed, she'd had no sight of Connor, and her heart had crumpled. At home, she'd at least not be in his house near people who cared about him, and dream every night he'd come through her bedroom door. Mikkel's face flushed. "My job includes ensuring that you have everything you need, and I hope to continue this service to you." Not if she went home today, although it was late in the afternoon. Perhaps he meant till morning when there would be a flight for her. He closed the door behind her. She swallowed and glanced around the room. It was dark, but she could still see the billiards table in the center of the room and a card table near the window. She called out, "Connor?" The footsteps she heard were obviously high heels and more than one pair. Staff wouldn't send her to more staff, and Mikkel had said Connor had wanted to see her. She lifted her chin as the other door across from her opened and revealed two women with clipboards. One of them turned on the light switch and the chandelier illuminated the room. Olivia stood straight and asked, "Oh, who are you?" Without an answer, they circled her like sharks, and the dark-haired woman with glasses boldly lifted a lock of Olivia's hair. Then the other woman, the red-haired one, snapped her fingers and said, "We're with His Royal Highness's court. Yes, without the glasses and with more makeup, you might be perfect. I will have dresses made up at once." Dresses? No. She avoided royal dinners and kept to herself as Connor had requested. She'd not break the rules now. Besides, it was better to nurse her schoolgirl crush out of sight. She waved her hands to ward off the glamour consultants. "Seriously, no. I've been keeping my end of the bargain with Connor. I stay out of sight, and he keeps his promise to my brother by protecting me. I've not done anything other than stay in my room as requested." "And charmed everyone on my staff, Olivia." Connor's voice boomed from behind her. She turned and saw him. His brown eyes were warm and deep and pools of intensity that made her trust him, plus his gorgeous dark hair and determined chin above a tailored suit that showed off every muscular contour. The two women clicked their heels and left, but Olivia was too mesmerized by Connor to notice. What made the prince almost human were those sexy dimples of his and that brilliant smile. She could imagine if she closed her eyes and puckered her lips what his kiss might feel like. He approached her, and the smell of trees mingling with testosterone that was unique to Connor wafted into her lungs. It made her ache for his touch. "There you are." She'd been here, waiting for him, since she arrived in his castle, but she kept her lips closed. Fantasies were for when she closed her eyes, not real life. He stopped before her and she crossed her arms, scowling to pretend she wasn't attracted to him. "Why did you need to see me, and why are they drawing me dresses?" Connor's brown eyes mesmerized and had her imagining how safe she'd be in his arms. No assassin's bullet from Maddox Murdoch had touched her that night in the hospital where he'd stayed with her and kept her safe. He'd held her hand while she stood near her father, unsure whether he'd live or die. Not once had Connor complained at their sleepless nights in the hospital. He'd comforted her with a hug, and she remembered how amazing it was to feel the strength of his arms and the warmth of his body against hers. The look he gave now reminded her of that moment. An older man in a suit waved at the prince from the door. Connor nodded and then placed his hand on her shoulder. A jolt of energy coursed through her as he gently guided her towards the next room. "Come, walk with me." "Okay." She stayed beside him without another word. They entered what appeared to be a private office. Connor flicked on the lights and she saw a marble desk that made the American presidents look cheap. He closed the massive oak door and stood beside her near the window. She traced the frame with her finger and waited. He straightened his spine and said, "Olivia, we came to an agreement quickly. You've been staying here and out of sight." "Yes." When she hid from the world with a good book, she was her usual self. The threat that had brought her to stay with her brother's friend in the palace seemed miles away now. But with the suspect in prison without bail, it was time to go home. This must be his way of saying goodbye. Perhaps the dress was intended for her last night here. She lowered her arms and stared out at the lush green lawn. I've been working in the suite you gave me. You grew up with every comfort. He turned toward her and leaned on the windowsill. Oil had made her family wealthy, but that did not make them old world royalty. He continued, You probably also know more of the people I need to know. This wasn't sounding like a goodbye. Her body grew warm, but she lowered her gaze. I don't know European royalty or anyone in the Mideast. If you need to know the American 1%, then I've pretty much met everyone. He reached out, touching her arms with a gentleness that belied the strength of his hands, and she almost melted. I need your help. How? Obviously, she would never refuse. Every night since she'd come to his castle, her Conner filled her dreams, not that he knew this. I need you to be my fiancé for the next few weeks. The world seemed to stop spinning for a moment. What? Pretending to be Conner's fiancé might be the chance to wow him with her amazing personality. Or it would be the death knell for her crush. She steadied herself against the nearby desk. Why? My kingdom cannot come to terms with the fact they have crowned an American nobody whose grandparents packed and left rather than lose their heads to a communist regime. My parents came here in 2002 and ruled for years, but now it seems it's my turn. After the war, she had heard of a few people regaining titles and lands that had been lost. Gabe had told her all about Conner's background the night he had asked him to watch her. She swallowed her pride. If his parents retired, Conner, from what she could tell, would be a fair ruler. He didn't need pretenses. You'll be a good king, she whispered. A smile grew on his face for a second. If I portray you as my fiancé, it will alleviate any concerns that I am not on par with the rest of the realm's returned nobility. No one in his right mind would think Conner was less than perfect. Sure, he had a bad boy history of dating a lot of women and joining the US Marines at 18, but neither made him any different from princes of other countries. She reached out and placed her hand on his smooth cheek. I don't understand. Why would I be able to help you? There are many that envy your family's lifestyle, but you don't flaunt your background. The people who lived under communist rule will accept a sensible American heiress, and the returned dignitaries can't object to someone like you. He'd be fine without her. She began to take her hand away, but he reached up and held it there. She held her breath and her body went completely still. If he wanted to kiss her, she'd let him, but she blinked and knew her affection was unrequited. She stared into his chocolate-colored eyes. I could just go home. Maddox has been arrested, so you don't have to protect me anymore. Your brother wants you safe, and I want you to help me. You can say no, Olivia. I won't force you. Her brother Gabe hadn't been sure who was after their family. He just knew they were all in danger. Unlike her sister, who fought him about protection, she had gone upstairs, packing her laptop and a few clothes. When she'd come back downstairs, she'd almost tripped on her own foot at the thought it was Conner who was coming for her. He could never force her. She was more than willing to spend her life in his arms. His explanation seemed to disguise some other agenda. He lowered her hand. She wasn't stupid, but she knew he wasn't being straightforward about why he needed a fiancé. Why did you agree to protect me? I owed it to Gabe for not revealing who I was in the Marines. Yes, she heard in the hospital from Conner the night her parents woke up about how many people in their unit were billionaires and princes. But Conner believed his friends were like his extended family, which meant she believed Conner must be the same. She nodded. Please answer this one more question. What? The truth? She swallowed and intended to press him, but instead asked the other burning question she had meant to ask when they first met. Why did a foreign prince join the US Marines? He smiled at her and took her hand and placed it near his heart, but kept his palm on top of hers. I was born in America and grew up in New York. I knew I was exiled royalty, but that didn't count for much when I was a kid. I joined the Marines to feel like a part of my country, despite the fact my parents became the rulers of Montina. Okay. She needed to work harder to ask the hard questions. In life, she was always the good sister or daughter who pleased everyone. Why couldn't she be more like Scarlett, who always said everything she felt? Now, she was about to agree to pretend to date the man she secretly loved because he asked her to, without a real explanation. Her older sister would never have put herself in this situation, but Olivia wasn't her. She swallowed and nodded. "I'll stay a few more weeks and pretend to be your fiancé. I've always wanted to be a real princess. Tonight, please accompany me on a public date." Pretending for him would be an incredible chance to take a photograph of him in his kingdom on her old-fashioned camera and always remember these moments. It was better than a cloud that she'd never log into. Even if she married and had children with someone boring in the future, she'd have the picture album to remember the few days she had spent as the girlfriend of a prince. Not even Scarlett had done that. Her mind raced. "I'll wear something I already own for this one. See you later, Olivia." He kissed the back of her hand before he let her go. Breathless, she answered, "Bye." No matter his reasons for needing a fake fiancé, she'd get to actually spend time with Conner. Olivia's heart soared while her mind conjured a fantasy of a kiss on one of his balconies. Perhaps one day her dreams might come true. For once, she had a chance to find out. Chapter 2. Conner left his guards to disappear behind his desk. Today, he needed to get some work done. He stopped the moment he saw Charlotte Vonivers waiting for him in one of the 2 plush red seats set before his white marble desk. Charlotte had been a spider in his house for years now, ingratiating herself with his mother and trying to flirt. She stood and adjusted her tight red dress that left little to the imagination. "Buonasera, Your Highness." From her painted lips, he heard no sense of real deference. He kept his distance while he searched his memory for the right foreign words. "Why are you here, Charlotte?" "We both know you need a wife. I'm here to relieve you." She came towards him and placed her hands on his groin. He circled out of her grasp. "This isn't going to happen." "Why not?" She pouted to show off her lips. "I have a fiancé," he said, taking a deep breath. His accent had made that sound more like a question when it wasn't. Olivia was nothing like this. "I think you should leave." "Oh, I didn't know." Her face blushed and she went to the door, but she kept her head up. Once he heard the door click and he knew he was alone, he drew another deep breath. The heavy floral bouquet in the air made his nose itch, but soon her perfume would disappear, just as she had when she walked out the door. Olivia's smiling face was burned into his mind as he walked toward the window and braced his hand against the window and stared at the garden. A second later, the phone rang on the desk. The clock read 6 o'clock. It had to be his parents checking in on him. Sometimes it felt like he spoke to them more while they were traveling than when they were all in this huge castle. He let his arm fall from the window and turned to answer the phone. His mother instantly greeted him. "Conner." "Mom." He swallowed and remembered growing up in that small townhouse outside of New York. "I hope your vacation is lovely." His mother made a dismissive sound and launched into her questions. "What is this I'm hearing about you getting married? And why do I have to hear the news from Lady Whitmore and not my own son?" So word traveled that fast. He assumed he'd have to take Olivia out once or twice for his mother or anyone to guess. He tugged his ear and sat on the edge of the desk that was older than he was. Swallowing, he steadied himself. "I have asked Olivia Hawke. I intended to bring her to you when you return home." "The American?" This time he shook his head and rubbed his temples. "Mom, you're American-born too." "That seems a lifetime ago now. We had hoped you'd consider Charlotte Vonivers." He could imagine his mother sitting on a veranda as his father entertained his card-playing friends inside whatever tropical villa they had rented. Paradise itself couldn't dull his mother's opinions. His spine stiffened. "Mother, I'm not marrying the half-German girl that everyone wants to talk about. I'm not interested in spending my life at a party." "Well, that's very grown-up of you. There is the added benefit marrying your Olivia will likely make our energy prices lower for our people." Since they'd become royals, his mother had turned into an entirely different person. Once in a while, he missed the cookie-baking mother who had always driven him to his football matches as a teenager. Now she always looked at the person's benefits to this country for her decisions. "I didn't ask her for her father's oil money." "Then why did you ask her?" because she's sweet and kind. The image of Olivia as she fretted over her parents while they were unconscious for 24 hours replayed in his mind. He had wanted to kiss her, but he had not allowed himself. She was his friend's sister. Forbidden fruit. "So, you are in love." His mother sighed. "That's the best reason to get married, son. I have to go." Lies weren't good for his soul either. Pretending some state duty, he quickly hung up, then paced back to his window and glanced out at his kingdom. There was no way he'd let Baron Veneri steal what his parents had dreamed of and finally regained. 2 weeks ago, the Baron had shown him an old law that meant his parents must abdicate and give him their crowns if he did not marry. They loved it here, and now that he moved as the Crown Prince, he placed duty to this home above all else. A knock caught his attention. He turned toward the door. A moment later, the true head of the castle walked in with head bowed. Connor lowered his hands to his sides. "Yes, Mikkel." "Your Highness." His head remained bowed in deference. "Why have you not told your parents about the Baron's warning?" Veneri's threats to take the kingdom because he wasn't married was based on laws no one else in the land had ever heard of. But it was possible. He had asked Olivia as a stopgap. She was the only woman within thousands of miles that he might be able to even consider marrying, although he knew he couldn't. "We have to research this. I'm not about to marry anyone quickly, but I want to know exactly what the 16th century law entails that allegedly demands the Crown Prince be married or forsake the crown. Miss Hawke will make an excellent bride." Olivia was kind-hearted and cared about her family. The tears he had seen in her eyes after the attack had left him aching to hold her forever. What had held him back was that she hadn't given any indication that she wanted him to, and her brother had showed up at the hospital in the end. His own family hadn't been close for years, and he'd never rob Olivia of such an important bond. His hands clenched at his sides. "I shouldn't even pretend to court her, Mikkel. Her brother is a friend, and he trusted me to protect her. I've stayed away from her out of respect." He glanced up to find Mikkel's all-knowing gaze on him, as if he saw straight through him. "Your friend James Clancy is now married to her sister," Mikkel said. "Miss Hawke has not been told yet because her sister wanted to talk to her, but she had yet to make that call. Her brother wants her protected until the danger is gone, and we enjoy having her here. She may never forgive him if he lied to her. It was probably for the best, but Olivia's tear-filled eyes still left him thinking about how he'd held her in his dreams. James was unconscious and unable to help when we were ambushed. I'm alive because of Gabe, James, Belle, Colt, and Harrison. You can take the time to get to know her tonight. You'll see Olivia is charming." Olivia brought light into his darkness. He crossed his arms and frowned. "I know that," he said. "It's why I stay far away from her. She's too good for me." The clock chimed 7. How had it already been an hour? His throat tightened. Tonight he would go out with Olivia and let the world think they were engaged. His skin felt cold and tingly, but he was determined. "Perhaps she is too good for you," Mikkel dared to comment. "But you need a change. I'm sure she'll love seeing our town square." His chest constricted. This could be a bad idea. His mind raced with possibilities. "There is a threat against her life," he reminded himself aloud even as he wavered. "We have security surrounding the roofs, Your Highness." Right. His army's entire job was to ensure the protection of his family, and they knew every visitor showed their passport upon entering their small but proud country. He strolled to the door. "Find out all you can about this law," he instructed over his shoulder. "I want all the history, all the exceptions, all the details. In 3 days. I won't let Baron Veneri steal the crown from my parents now." Mikkel held the door open. "Excellent. Miss Hawke will be waiting for you." Connor retreated to his room. He had a few minutes, and the staff had already laid out his blue suit. He showered, changed, and tied the bow tie himself. Once he was presentable, he made his way down the stairs and found himself mesmerized by a vision in a pale blue dress that shimmered like the evening sky. He looked into the brown eyes of the most caring woman he had ever met. When he finally reached the landing, his skin was tingling with the impossible hope that he may get the chance to live his dreams. Standing in front of her, Conner could not help but admire her while she brushed her cocktail dress free of wrinkles that didn't exist. "Olivia, you look amazing." She drew a sharp breath and a delicate blush rose in her cheeks. "Is it too much?" I wasn't sure what kind of dress to wear because I wasn't sure where we were going or if it was just a state dinner. He held back a smile as her words tumbled out. "Wear that." He offered her his arm. Tonight, the Baron would realize it would not be so easy to steal his parents' crown. As Olivia took his arm, the tingle of anticipation intensified, but he held steady. "We're going into town for a nice dinner." He walked her to the front gates that he had previously made her swear she'd never cross. Then his staff threw them open and she gasped, a huge smile on her face. "We're leaving the palace?" "Yes. Is that a problem?" The genuineness of her emotions was so different from those of most people he encountered each day. Olivia had a bounce in her step and an irrepressible honesty about her. "No, it's great." The gates creaked closed behind them once they passed, and Conner's bulletproof limo waited for them. He led her toward it. They descended the few marble steps together, and guards stood at a decorous distance. He stopped in front of the car and gazed down at her. "Olivia, before we go..." "Yes?" She blinked up at him, and he forgot what he had to say. He forgot everything other than how much he wanted to kiss her. He never would. Her nearness and the smell of roses mixed with her scent rushed through his veins and made him ache to do far more than take her out. Instead, all he said was, "I hope you enjoy yourself tonight." She beamed at him, and he took the liberty of putting his hand on the small of her back as he helped her into the limo. "Thank you for this," she said. "I owe you." "Quite the opposite, I assure you." He scooted in next to her and closed the door. She turned, her eyes widening, though her face blushed bright red as she pointed at his chest. "You missed a few buttons on your shirt." He tightened his muscles and flexed before reaching for the buttons. "I thought you wanted to see my abs." Her pink lips parted, and then she giggled. "Wait, you're flirting? I need a moment." "Why?" "Because you haven't talked to me in weeks." She brushed her hair out of her face. "Not since the night you took me from the hospital after my parents woke up. Once we came here, I hardly ever saw you, and now I get to admire your dimples. This is progress." He still desperately wanted to kiss her. Her nearness and her inviolability mingled into a bittersweet agony. "You like my dimples?" Maybe. But more importantly, I like dinner and I'm hungry. I can't wait to see this restaurant you promised." The hope in her voice made him want to hold her again, and he sat farther back in his seat without a word. Olivia deserved better than he could offer, but his body hardened at the thought that she might be his, even if only for a moment. Chapter 3. Conner glanced at his security team as he walked beside Olivia. No one would succeed in getting through his guards. His team had run security along their entire route. Olivia glided beside him, happily stopping every few feet to look into a shop window or make adorable faces at a baby in a stroller as the family rushed out of the shop to chase their runaway toddler. Now they were close to the restaurant. Olivia stopped and stared into a candy shop. "This is lovely." He patted her hand where it rested on his arm. It felt right to have her there. "Come, I want to show you the church." She turned away from the window and shot him a narrow glance, but followed. "Why?" Now they were finally there, and he pointed to the bell tower. "The townspeople voted here for the return of their monarch, my father. Their vote changed the course of my life." She peeked over the metal fence at the lawns of the well-kept cathedral. "For the better. I often wonder about that." He ushered her through the gate and opened the front door to show her inside. They walked the halls for a few minutes. Ranks of votive candles burned in front of a marble statue of Saint Mark, a remnant from the Venetian conquest of their nation. Then Conner pointed out the frescoes. "These are originals by Vitale da Bologna, a painter from the Renaissance." "They're lovely," Olivia said, "although I think I prefer the grand stairs leading up to your castle. They remind me of Cinderella, climbing the staircase to find her happily ever after. Neither of them said more. She hugged her waist and stared at all the art on the wall. He left her alone but watched her admire the art. A few minutes later, she raised her eyebrow at him. Dinner? Conner once again placed his hand on the small of her back, and the desire to kiss her came rushing back. He swallowed the urge with some difficulty and led her out into the sunset. This way. Outside, with the evening sky glowing orange and pink over the cobblestone town, he was mesmerized by her sheer joy at being in the moment. She was unlike anyone else he had ever met, so genuine and so free with her emotions. His people would adore her openness. As they made their way to the restaurant, she tugged at his arm. "I'm glad we're walking," she said. "I've been cooped up in my suite for weeks." If she left in the middle of his political controversies, then he would be in trouble. The thought left him cold, especially because the threat against her was waning. His mother would insist on Charlotte Vonnever's if he couldn't convince Olivia to stay. They passed the outdoor portion of the restaurant, a charming sidewalk cafe that he'd enjoy with her if there wasn't a threat against her life. Conner opened the main door for her. "What do you miss about home?" he asked casually as they entered. "My parents," she admitted as the waitress showed them to their table and provided the menus. "But it's nice here." Once they were alone, she added, "I've never worried about someone coming to shoot me," which is what Scarlett had to face. If she knew Scarlett had almost been one of Maddox's victims, then she might know her sister was now a married woman. If she knew Maddox was arrested for the crime and the threat against her was likely gone, would she leave him? The thought left him cold. "She talked to you?" She looked at him with wide eyes. "No, I heard from Gabe." "Why?" "Nothing." He never should have promised Gabe to keep something like that to himself because he never thought one sister calling another would take this long. At the time, it wasn't his business, but now he felt heat burning his cheeks. "I hope you like this place." "I'm sure I will if the staff are anything to go by. They're all absolutely charming." He barely looked at the menu, having already decided on the lasagna AI semi di papavero. He gazed at Olivia's slender nose, the slightly large ears that she covered with her hair, and it made him smile. "They are curious about you. After dinner, the spectacle will get bigger." "Why?" she asked, lowering her menu. He leaned closer and smelled roses again. He wanted to taste her, but held back. "We'll walk across the street to Jodo's and pick out a diamond ring for you." Her entire face blushed and she averted her gaze, turning it to the menu. "What?" "You promised to say yes." His heart quickened. If she changed her mind, the Baron might steal his parents' crown and it would be his fault. She looked up as the waitress approached. "I did." Conner ordered his plain lasagna-like noodles while Olivia perused the menu. Her brow crinkled with confusion. Finally, she shook her head and she handed it to the waitress. "I'll have the same." "You'll like dinner. It's different. The poppy seeds reminds me of a NY bagel, but it's mixed in the sauce." "I'll give it a try." He ordered a bottle of Azienda Agricola Vicentini Andrea Pignolo. The owner of the vineyard had recently visited his mother, and it was his policy to support local businesses. He hoped all his kingdom did the same. Once the waitress left them, he leaned forward and took her hand in his. "Olivia," he said, "if you're having second thoughts, now is the time to tell me." She pursed her lips. "I'm happy we're here and want to say yes, but I want to talk about my sister first." He blinked and his eyes widened. "What about her?" "You sounded disappointed that I hadn't spoken to Scarlett." She pushed away from the table but made no move to leave. "I did?" Her face was pink again. "I know she's the pretty one in the family." Most people couldn't read his masks, but he saw her insecurity and wasn't comfortable holding Gabe's secret anymore. He squeezed her hand. "Your sister has something to tell you that should come from her, and your brother asked me not to mention it. It has nothing to do with me." Her face went white and then she squeezed his hand back. "What is it?" "Secrets and Scarlett go hand in hand. I don't want that to spoil this." One day, Gabe would forgive him. She married James. Her lips parted. "You're joking." She recovered herself as the waitress brought their dinner. They sat in silence as the buttery lasagna noodles with poppy seeds were placed in front of them. When the waitress had gone, Olivia turned back to him. "Why didn't she tell me?" Normally, Connor's first dates were spent complimenting the woman and figuring her out. All pretenses were out the window with Olivia, but then she had already touched his heart the day he met her. Not that he let her know. "Gabe told her not to give you ideas of coming home yet." She picked up her fork and nodded. "Connor, eat fast. I'll say yes to your proposal. Can I ask a question about it when we finish?" He picked up his fork and ate as she told him. He stopped to sip the wine and stare at Olivia a few times. She was sweet and had an innocence about her that shocked his senses. It was her earnestness that made her stand out when he compared her to women like Charlotte. Olivia wore her emotions on her sleeve and lacked the pretentiousness of many women he'd met recently. A few minutes later, they finished and sat sipping their red wine. He gestured towards her with his glass. "You were full of questions earlier. Ask away." She hugged her waist with one hand. "How long do you need me for?" Until he knew the validity of the 16th century law and what the exceptions may be, he thought. He sipped his wine, giving himself time to form an answer, his gaze never leaving hers. Finally, he said, "I don't know yet. I wish I had a reason for you to stay other than an outdated threat against your life. I'd pay you if I thought that you'd need it. I don't." She shook her head as though he had offended her. There had to be a way to keep her. "Is there anything you do need?" "What do I need?" She said the words slowly, contemplating their meaning. "Maybe there is something." He blinked. "Yes?" She nodded her head. "I need to stop comparing myself to my sister. It's a no-win situation, as I know she's the pretty one in the family. According to Gabe, Scarlett was a high-maintenance princess. But she wasn't the kind of princess Connor was looking for. It's true my sister cured almost everything with retail therapy, but she is also the star of the family. I'm the benchwarmer. Scarlett might be vivacious, but Olivia was the type of woman a man dreamed of going home to at night. She had haunted his dreams since he had met her. If you believe that, then you're wrong, he assured her. You're lovely. She wrinkled her nose. Lovely is not beautiful, and I don't think I want the world thinking, wow, she's gorgeous. I'd just get shy and turn red-faced. I just want one guy to feel it and to love me for himself. You're a romantic, he said, and finished his glass. None of this helped him find a reason for her to stay until he sorted everything out. She finished her glass as well and then shrugged her shoulders. Isn't every girl? No, they are most definitely not. In the past few weeks, he'd met countless women he'd considered as potential brides. Olivia's lack of guile or complaining, even though he kept her inside, made her unique and special. Everyone else he'd met would have demanded more of his attention. To delay her departure, he'd settled on this plan with Olivia, but he had no intention of stealing the baby sister of his best friend to whom he owed his very life. Do you need anything else, Olivia? She still hugged her waist uncomfortably with her other hand. Well, what I need is help to find a guy not already in my sister's orbit. Everyone I know also knows Scarlett, and then most guys only want to talk about her. I thought that would end in high school, but it didn't. His heart leaped painfully as he processed what she had said. So, you will pretend to be my fiancé if I help you find a man that you might actually marry? She nodded and let her waist go. Now, that would be awesome. Connor's stomach churned and his throat filled with bile at the thought of helping Olivia find someone else, but there was nothing he could do. I'll start a search then and ensure you meet more men of your status who don't also know Scarlett. Are you ready to become my temporary fiancé? She pulled his arm and then stood up herself. Let's go. Tonight he put on the show and asked Olivia in public to marry him as custom dictated. For now, he placed his hand on her back and realized she was his. Nothing else should matter, and he would do what was right in the end. Chapter 4. Olivia stared into the brown depths of Connor's eyes and wished he was in love with her. If he were, then she could run her hands through his thick, coarse brown hair and hold him forever. Her fantasies ran uncontrollably while she was near him, And with the fake engagement, it became more difficult to remind herself that it was all one-sided. Conner tapped the glass surface of the diamond counter while the jeweler placed his creations on top for her to peruse. "Olivia," Conner said, startling her, "the designer can fashion any ring you desire." She wrapped her arm around her waist again to steady herself. If she was to be the princess, then she would honor the traditions and customs of the land as would be her sworn duty. She glanced at the rings and saw nothing particularly unique. She looked to the jeweler, who seemed a nice older man with a mustache and warm brown eyes. "What are the traditional designs of your region?" she asked. "I'd like a diamond setting that recalls your home." He raised a finger and searched under his counter. Then he produced a photo that seemed almost 100 years old and pointed toward a huge diamond. "This is the royal setting. Most of the crown jewels were stolen years ago, but I have a picture of the Marquis de Glory that I would love to recreate for you, Your Highness." She gestured to the photo and stared at Conner. "That is gorgeous." He shrugged. "Then I can't say no. However, do you have something more modern and available now that I can buy as well for this lovely woman?" Her skin felt tight and her lips ached for his kiss. It would never happen. She knew that. But it didn't stop her dreaming about it every night. The jeweler beamed. "Of course, Your Highness." Right. She had to focus on the here and now and live less in her head. She hugged her waist again as Conner held out a ready-made ring and looked at her expectantly. She shook her head. "Does that get old?" "What?" "Speak and think less. Her sister would know what to do." She swallowed. "Having everyone call you by a title." He brushed his hand on her cheek. "Not everyone. You call me Conner. I like that." Then he let go to put the first overly large diamond back. Her cheek felt alive, and she'd never wanted to wash the feeling off, to lose how aware every part of her was to him. He picked another ring and held it up for her. "Do you like this one, Olivia?" The simple band and a single diamond was exactly what she had always wanted. She felt her body flush, and she looked away. "Very much." Distraction didn't begin to describe what she needed. If she let herself imagine a magical moment for herself, it would be Conner slipping the ring on her finger before telling her those magic words. "I love you." She blinked and brought herself back to reality. "Do you have any friends in the same station of life as you? Or are you the only American to regain a kingdom?" Conner gave the ring to the jeweler, who rang it up without actually taking a credit card. She assumed he built the palace. "Yes and no," he answered. "There is a family with 3 sons around my age who rule Avche, another small country also taken by the communists after the war. I think they were exiled to England, but the 3 of them are helping their parents restore the kingdom." Married? If he had friends he could talk to about whatever was the underlying reason motivating this charade, then at least he wouldn't be alone. His face seemed to show a small blush as he held open the door for her to leave. "No, I will introduce you." Conner was still holding the ring, and everyone they passed now followed them in procession. He took her hand as they walked into the town square. She swallowed, seeing the entire courtyard now had flowers strewn across it and scores of onlookers contained behind barricades watching their every move. Her heart was pounding as he stopped beside the Fountain of Poseidon and knelt down on one knee. Her arm wrapped itself around her waist again. "What are you doing?" she whispered, knowing perfectly well what it was. Instead of answering, he reached out for her left hand. Then he took the ring out and asked, "Olivia Hawke, will you marry me?" She heard a collective gasp that echoed exactly how she felt. If none of this was real, then she was going to live this lie as long as she could. The extravagance of the moment shook her and thoughts scattered. She reached down, pulled him upright, and threw herself into his arms. "Conner, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and his calloused hands brushed her skin as he cupped her face. His breath mingled with hers, and she closed her eyes. A moment later, their lips met, and she melted like butter in the moonlight. The world stopped existing for anything except the 2 of them, and when he finally pulled away, she felt branded, entirely his. Now, we walked to the castle. He interlaced his fingers with hers and led her up the small hill. All around them, people threw flowers and cheered. She tugged on his arm. "They're throwing flowers at us." "It's tradition," Conner explained. "Mikkel walked me through the ceremony earlier. The future queen should have flowers at her feet." Mikkel was the nicest person in the castle. She had learned he and his wife liked to reenact love scenes from movies together. Clearly, he was a romantic at heart as well. "How did you learn all these traditions? Did Mikkel teach you in a classroom?" "When we first arrived here, yes. My father had wanted to come and visit the place his father had told him so much about, and the next thing any of us knew, he and my mother were crowned. Mikkel sat us down for a month and began teaching us the ins and outs of life in this country, leaving government affairs to my father. I focused on economics, ensuring our businesses prospered in the world market. We found having a royal signature on certain products had a favorable impact on sales." "He's a lovely gentleman," Olivia said as they rounded the corner to the palace gate. Her heart and body both agreed she was his forever, if he would only ask. Mikkel was a safe topic and calmed her nerves. "How does he know so much?" Conner stopped in front of the gate. "His grandfather was my grandfather's primary court advisor and taught him every detail of his station in life if the kingdom was restored," he said. Then he wrapped his hands around her waist. Her heart raced again and her lips parted. The cheering of the crowd swelled around them again. Her body yearned for his touch, no matter it was all for show. She swallowed and asked again, "What are you doing?" "This is also tradition," he said, and then he kissed her again. Once again, the world faded away and she belonged to him. His kiss made her hunger for more. She leaned against his chin for a moment afterward and whispered, "Your kiss is like fireworks." "Come," he said, pulling her inside the gate. He raced up the cobblestone steps and into the house, holding her fast by the hand. Once they made it into a deserted room, he wrapped his arms around her again. "This is not tradition." This time his kiss was harder and more intense. Every part of her felt singed. Heat coursed through her and he lifted her in the air to kiss her even more. It was just as well, because she doubted her legs would support her now. She sucked on his lip and then admitted her deepest desire. "Conner, I want you." His voice was deep and guttural as he said, "I want to get you into my bed and never let you go, Olivia." "Yes, please," she gasped. Tonight she would live out her fantasy. It was time. It was real. He was hers for now and she wanted every moment to last. Chapter 5. Conner held Olivia's hand and quickly led her up the grand staircase. His fingers were slightly calloused, but she loved the roughness against her soft skin. She followed him down a wing she had never seen before, past portraits of his parents and grandparents, and realized this must be the family's private quarters. Any other time, she'd have loved to linger and put names to those faces, but right now, Conner consumed her thoughts. He led her down a blue hall and closed the door behind them into the first room. His lips met hers again, and those fireworks she had felt outside blossomed even more intensely. She leaned against the wall for support. He slowed himself for a moment. Pulling his lips away, he ran his fingers through her hair and kissed her forehead. "Olivia." Her heart pounded like she'd run a marathon. She wondered if he struggled against his better judgment. Guessed that was why he'd stopped. She hugged him and grasped his belt buckle, standing on tiptoes to reach his ear. "Don't stop, Conner." With his hands pressed against her backside, she sensed his tingling anticipation. "I shouldn't. Your brother is a friend." "Don't you dare stop," she insisted, and reached for his pants. Tonight, she'd live out her fantasy. Tonight, she was so close to having everything she ever wanted. Without another thought, she unzipped his fly. His eyes widened when she reached into his underwear and his manhood stiffened under her touch. He grunted. "What? You don't like it?" She knelt down to kiss it. "I think your body disagrees. Come here." The moment she did, he dropped his pants and pointed her toward the bed. When she wasn't fast enough, he half-carried her, claiming her lips in another searing kiss. Setting her down on the bed, he unbuttoned her shirt, slipping it off her shoulders before working on her pants and underwear. Olivia reached out and took Connor's shirt off him before running her hands across his chest. His muscles were toned and perfect. Connor kissed her nipple, and electricity coursed through her. She leaned back to give him more access to her body. He raised his gaze to hers and grinned before going back to the other nipple. She sighed and let him. The zip of his touch on her skin made her ache for more. When he positioned himself near her core, she froze. He stopped and kissed her lips again. "Why are you tensing? Relax. You're bigger than I thought." It was the only excuse she had. He had no idea she'd never done this before, and maybe he never would. She nodded her head and spread her legs wider. Connor took up the invitation and pressed home. He let out a half-groan, half-sigh as he pushed in. "You're tight." His eyes widened on hers in sudden understanding. "Are you a virgin?" Her face grew hot under his scrutiny when she wanted to present herself as cool and calm. Absently, she wondered how Scarlett would handle this. Channeling her sister, she gave him a sultry smile. "Clearly not now." He pressed down on her and kissed her lips, this time with a softer edge. "Sweetheart, you should have told me." Inside, Olivia felt alive in ways she never was before. She wrapped her legs around him to hold him there and played with his hair on the back of his head. "Don't stop." He moved inside her again, and she felt like the stars reached down to touch her. The rhythm he set for them soon became the only thing that kept her on Earth, as the rest of the world faded, and all she wanted was to be his. Forever. Inside her, she felt her muscles contract and he exploded. His face seemed both pained and passionate while he held her tight. Then he collapsed on her, and his delicious weight made her feel perfect. She hugged his shoulder and neck, kissing his slightly salty skin. He moaned, holding her close for a few precious minutes. All too soon, he slipped out of her. Then he rolled to the side. "Olivia, don't move." What did he mean, don't move? He needed to be back here in her arms. She began to sit up when he walked away, and then returned a moment later with a wet washcloth. The cleanliness felt good, and he began to bathe and caressed her now used vagina. The water was cold, and she yelped. "What are you doing?" "Washing you," he said. He didn't stop, but his motions gentled. No one likes a mess. When finished, he threw the washcloth in his hamper and climbed on the bed. She picked up his arm and drew it over her. "Hold me. I won't let you go," he murmured and kissed her neck. For tonight, she was his, and it was more than she planned. She sighed, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Sounds good." She settled into his arms, warm and protected. The moon high in the sky outside the huge window of his room gave the bed an almost magical glow. She shifted, and Connor's arms tightened their hold. "Why did you wait?" Again, her face heated. She closed her eyes while she repeated the question. "Why was I a virgin?" "Yeah." This time she looked up and stared into his brown eyes. Beside him, she didn't feel judged. She swallowed and let her defenses down. "I'm picky sometimes. Besides, why would I let just any man touch me?" His eyes narrowed. It wasn't religion. There was nothing wrong with God or anything, but she wasn't sure about all the details of eternity. She shrugged and let that thought go. Not exactly, but it might have influenced me in a good way. The decision was always mine. The way I see it was that I can spend weeks figuring out what I'll wear to one of my parents' parties. So why would I let just any guy touch me? I figure inside of me must mean even more than clothes I put on the outside. He kissed her cheek. Then I'm equally honored. Again, she felt like she was his, but needed to keep her head on straight and not live in her fantasies. "Connor, how many women have been in your bed?" He massaged the goosebumps that grew on her arm, then leaned over her. "In this particular bed, only you. I don't bring women to my castle since I live with my parents these days." A giggle escaped her, and he joined in with a chuckle of his own. No other man her age would say anything like that. "Fair enough." He laid down, ensuring the blankets covered her. Are you comfortable? For now, she lived in this bubble, and she never wanted to escape. She wrapped her hand around his arm. Extremely. This was everything I ever wanted. What if we made the engagement real? The words felt like they echoed through her and reached her soul. If she married Conner, she would be with the man of her dreams and desires. She held her breath for a second to let the weight of that statement sink in. What? He sat up, taking her with him. Olivia, will you marry me? Wow, yes. A lightness in her chest grew and adrenaline rushed through her body. Her fast must be beaming because she never had a poker face as she hugged and kissed him. This was it. Everything would be perfect in her life. She had Conner. Chapter 6. Conner shook his head at the bright blue jacket with jewels encrusted in it. He had absolutely no desire to look foolish when he met his parents on their return. With Olivia, it was important to follow tradition, but without looking absurd to the world. Mikkel closed the door behind himself as the servant carrying the offending jacket left. He coughed and set the table with a teacup. Sire, Miss Olivia was in your room this morning. The one good thing in his life these days had happened last night. Now that he'd had Olivia and seen just how precious she was, he refused to let her go. It was all too confusing to explain, so he simply nodded. She's to marry me, Mikkel. His eyes brightened, but Conner felt the assessment in that stare regardless. She agreed, sire? Right. The plan had been to lie. Until Olivia blew that intention out of the water with just one kiss. He sat at his desk and opened his laptop to do some work. Yes, and it's not for show. Mikkel unfolded a napkin and placed it on the corner of the desk. Excellent. So we no longer have to worry about the Baron's threats either way. The Baron. His face felt hot. Last night they had not discussed details like Veneri. I didn't tell Olivia about him. It's best not to say anything. Yes, sire. Mikkel bowed his head, though Conner knew well that his older face showed no deference. He poured tea into the cup. Either way, I'll see to hanging your sheets out the window. Conner looked up from his laptop. What? Why? Tradition. He pushed the cup and saucer forward. What tradition? Conner raised the cup to his mouth and took a sip. Strong and black, the way he liked it. To let everyone know she's now yours. He choked on the tea and put the cup down. That sounds medieval. Don't. Mikkel stood with his hands behind his back. Traditions are what brought this kingdom back together and put crowns on your parents' heads. We needed the crown as our symbol of reclaiming our past, sire. Olivia will be accepted. In fact, the newspapers are already speculating whether we'll see a reduction in energy prices for everyone. Her father's vast oil empire was common knowledge. Conner gritted his teeth and hoped she never assumed he had asked her because of that. Plus, he owed her brother an explanation. He lowered his head in thought. Don't let her see or hear that. And get her brother on the phone. I owe Gabe an apology. Mikkel picked up the phone while Conner typed into his computer a few figures. Dialing now, sire, but there is a busy ringtone. I need to talk to him today. One benefit of being a prince was that he had people to talk to others for him and to arrange small details. But friendship meant he had to handle this conversation himself and own up to how he betrayed Gabe with Olivia. Once he knew the time in Miami, where Gabe was, he'd map out his apology as best he could. Mikkel put the phone down. Very well, sire. He took a step backward but did not turn to leave. Instead, he stood with his hands behind his back. May I ask a question? Yes. There was no way to avoid his opinion anyhow. His loyal advisor stood straighter but did not meet his gaze. Would it not be better, sire, if you speak to her about how you struggled with accepting your place and how not to let the papers affect her? True. He had learned that it was best not to speak to the press through a series of mistakes. The Marines had trained him to hold his peace, but he had never been trained how to run an entire government. You're right. I'll speak to her tonight. Last night, Olivia had been the one woman in a long time who'd made him feel something. Unlike other women, she didn't expect him to be anyone but himself. She even insisted upon calling him by his given name when no one else dared. After breakfast, a group of his mother's friends had come to speak to her and she had left with them. He glanced at Mikkel. Where is she now? Mikkel nodded. Ladies-in-waiting came and took her into a different part of the castle, saying she must be properly dressed to meet your parents upon their return. Fair enough. At least she was here. He turned to his computer and began typing. Quite right, sire. Good day. Mikkel's cell phone rang just as he turned to leave, and Conner stopped typing to listen. Mikkel answered with his earpiece, and his whispers in the low, urgent tone had his full attention. Conner stood from his desk. What's going on? Is there a security threat? The older man nodded and continued to speak into the phone while armed guards took their places in front of the door. He then tugged his earphone out of his ear and coughed. There has been a breach in the castle. We're checking out the footage now, sire. We're here to ensure your safety. He could take care of himself. Get Olivia. She is not on my protocol yet. 2 more guards came and stood in front of him. He did not need an army, Olivia did. His heart beat wildly. She'd have no idea what to do. He brushed past his guards. Then let's pretend I'm not here and I'm with her right now. He stormed down the hall with his guards following. Mikkel chased after them. Security is en route to the bridal suites. The what? Conner turned around and then remembered the map of the castle he had learned years ago. He pointed toward the staircase that led to a tower room. That's this way? Yes, sire. Once he'd reached the top step, he saw Olivia stood in the middle of the room of women and worked at the buttons of her throne blouse. He called her. Olivia! Conner, what's going on? She came to hug him. Security breach. If she was all right, nothing else mattered. He held her close and felt calmer with her cheek on his shoulder. He placed his hand on the small of her back and led her downstairs and headed to his office to wait out the crisis. Stay with me until we get back to the family suites. On the bottom step, he heard something buzz past him. Olivia jerked backward and said, "Ouch." What? He held her up and saw blood bloom on her chest. His entire body went cold. Olivia! He bent and picked her up. More blood stained her white shirt. Where are you taking me? To a doctor. You've been shot. His bedroom was the only secure place he could think of. He pushed his way inside and gently laid her onto the freshly made bed. Outside, he vaguely noticed the old sheet flapping in the wind. That was not important now. As the doctor rushed in, Conner turned to Mikkel. Find who did this. Yes, sire. Mikkel said and spoke to the other guards. The doctor and Olivia spoke, but Conner's mind raced with who would do this. I thought Maddox was in jail, Olivia called out. He instantly returned to the bed, but the doctor blocked him from joining her. Your brother is really going to hate me. Don't be ridiculous, she answered with a snort. At least her spirits were up. Was she in shock? He placed his hand on the doctor's arm and stepped beside him. Doctor, help her, she's bleeding. The doctor knocked on Olivia's breast. It gave a metallic clink. What is this you're wearing? She unbuttoned her shirt and showed what lay underneath. The ladies had me trying on a metal bra. I felt like I was going to a Renaissance fair, but they said I was to wear that over a dress at some ceremony. We were shopping for the one that fit me right when all the commotion started. The doctor motioned for her to take it off so he could examine her wound more closely. She undid it with her face red, and he glanced at the beige fabric bra she had underneath the metal. Well, it stopped the bullet, he said. Your bleeding is only skin deep from the ripped metal. Thank God, Conner said, picking up the metal bra she'd tossed aside and stared at the bullet. He handed it to a guard for analysis and then took her hand. Someone shot at your heart. I told you I was fine. Olivia shrugged and watched the doctor place a few things, including a bandage, on a table. Conner stroked her palm with his thumb. This is my fault. I failed you. Her eyes narrowed and she shook her head. This was your home. Someone broke inside. That's not your fault, Conner. The doctor motioned for Conner to move and allow him access to her wound. Olivia squeezed his hand harder. Ouch, now that hurt. I'm cleaning the wound, the doctor said, putting the gauze away and picking up a bandage. He was done a few moments later, and Olivia tugged her bra back on the spot he had worked on. While she sat and spoke with the doctor, Conner turned toward Mikkel, who stood sentry near the door. Has security found the assassin? Whoever it was seems to have disappeared. This might be a professional in action. Olivia was here because of a threat to her family. As they were so far away and the suspect caught, he thought it was over. Right now, the original threat to Olivia's family was his only clue. Perhaps it wasn't over after all. Maddox worked with others to steal from Gabe years ago. Let me look further into his financial records and we'll find leads. He returned to the bed, but Olivia was already standing under her own power. So, I guess I won't be going out with you anymore? He kissed her forehead, glad to see she took the situation seriously. Now that you're about to be a princess, it could be anyone. Let's just give this some time. Conner hugged Olivia and refused to let go. The rest of the world slowly faded while their hearts beat in unison. The doctor opened the door to leave, bringing Conner back to the present. Your Highness? Mikkel interrupted, his hand to his earpiece. Baron Veneri and Charlotte Vonivers are seeking an audience. They were the last people he needed to see with Olivia right now. He held her close. Not now. Tell them to come back another time. As Mikkel left, Olivia asked, Who's Baron Veneri? Of all the names he didn't want to hear on her lips, that one topped the list. The Baron could cause problems, and he needed to talk to her about him. No one important. He lied for the moment. It's time we call your brother so we can start the search for Maddox's associates. She covered her chest. First, let me change. I'm not very comfortable in a bra. People would want to see she was safe, but right now he needed to keep her safe, and that meant keeping her away from others. I'll take you to your room. No, I'll go with staff and meet you in your office. She stepped out of his reach and walked to the guards. Wait, he called out. She turned. Yes? Stay safe, he said, motioning for his guards to accompany her. The threat wasn't over despite how everyone acted, and nothing had prepared him for seeing her hurt. Olivia deserved to live a full life, not bleed out in his arms. She returned and kissed his cheek. Of course. When she left, the sensation of her kiss lingered. Today, he had almost failed her. He couldn't let that happen ever again. Chapter 7. Olivia was more shaken than she had let Conner believe. Her heart still beat a mile a minute. She had been shot. The fairy tale nonsense she had been living shattered like the bubble it was, and reality broke through. Just because Conner lived in a castle did not mean the real world would disappear. The wound near her chest would be reminder enough for now that she needed to get her head out of the clouds. She dialed the one person who always called her out for living in daydreams. The phone clicked, and instead of hello, Olivia said, Scarlett, I need advice. Hearing her sister's voice helped Olivia to relax almost immediately, and she sat in the nearby chair in her room. Olivia, what's going on? Her voice softened. I read online that you're marrying Conner Udine. Good. At least her family knew she was happy. She hugged her stomach. He asked me and I said yes, but he must think I'm completely stupid. Why would he think that? The patience in her tone caught Olivia by surprise. Because I've been living in my books in my head again, not the real world. Scarlett smacked her gums through the phone. My criticisms can be harsh sometimes, she said. Don't repeat them. Olivia's hand clenched at her side. She expected her sister to confirm the stark and unflattering image of how Olivia had been cooped up in this castle with only her books to read. Her mother would be researching charities to support, but all she had done was stay in her room with her books. The picture made her spine feel cold. She drew her legs up onto the chair and hugged her knees, resting her chin on top. But it's the truth about me. I find it so easy to let myself disappear into a fantasy that I seem childish. Scarlett made a tisk sound. What's happened to make you so hard on yourself tonight? It's afternoon here. Olivia answered. She put her feet back to the floor, but her arm remained curled around her waist. Spill, sis. Today, she was alive because she had followed directions without thinking. Let people lead her without question into a ridiculous outfit that she never said a word about and just followed directions. Someone tried to kill me, but the stupid metal bra I was wearing stopped the bullet. Thank goodness you're okay. True. She closed her eyes and tried to think about the positive aspects. Starting today, she'd stop living in her head and plan the rest of her life in the crisp air of reality. Connor was a young girl's fantasy, and she was an adult. She'd never thrown herself at a man and would be more restrained in the future. Scarlett, she said, I spend a lot of my time thankful to not be you. But the second I was shot, all I kept thinking was how I had wasted too much time not telling you and everyone that I love them and I'd never want anyone else as my sister. Olivia, you were always the sweetest one in our family. Don't beat yourself up with recriminations. Her eyes widened. I wasn't. Scarlett made that tisk sound again that said without speaking, no. Uh-huh. Now go and talk to your prince. Thanks. At least her heart was steady now and she wasn't panicked. She hung up the phone and changed into a plain, midnight blue dress that her mother had her pack on every trip she'd ever taken these past few years. It was time to wear it, so she cut the tags and then straightened her hair and makeup. A few minutes later, she opened her bedroom door. I'm ready to go find Connor now, she told the guards. His Highness is in his study. She nodded her thanks. He spends his days there. The heels she wore were her own, and they clapped lightly on the rug that overlaid the marble floors. With a new sense of who she was and what she had to do, she kept her head high. From now on, she needed to be less in her head and more present. The bullet had taught her that. She smiled and waved at everyone she passed until she arrived at the study. Mikkel stood near the door. She nodded politely and knocked on the door, entering without waiting for an answer. Connor. He stood near the window, speaking into the phone, but quickly hung up when he saw her. Olivia, are you feeling well? He motioned for a seat, but she shook her head. I'm good. My head has come out of the clouds, though. He moved 2 chairs closer together near the window and then stood in front of one. Please sit. He was so insistent that she relented. Once she was seated comfortably, he sat beside her, and Mikkel closed the study doors so they were alone. Her heart began to pound faster again, but she took his hand. I was shot today. We will find who did this. He was interested in catching the culprit, which made sense, but he needed to understand her. She took a deep breath and tried again. I'm sure you will, but in that moment, I realized that we don't know each other on a deep level. I'd like for us to take some time to really bond. Until we catch the assassin, it's dangerous to go out and do things like a couple. He met outside. Fair enough, but she'd been shot inside his castle. The truth was they weren't safe anywhere, but she let that thought go and chose her battle. Okay, so let's go into a tower and lock ourselves in for the rest of the day and talk. We can make it a picnic. His brown eyes gazed deeply into her eyes, and she felt that stirring that always came from being near him. This time, she was also aware of how her body ached for his touch once more. He took her hand. I'll need an hour to clear my schedule. Fair enough. She needed to make an action plan of what she wanted to do with her life other than read. She stood and smoothed a non-existent wrinkle out of her dress. 1 hour. I'll go to my suite and blog about the last book I read. Come and get me. She turned to leave, but he caught her wrist. Olivia, wait. Yes. She turned and stared at him again. His strong chin and olive skin sent a warm wave of affection through her, and she placed her hand on his cheek. He brought her hand to his heart, and she could feel his beat through his muscular chest. Why did you walk out so fast earlier? I needed to clear my head, she said, but refused to move. He kissed her forehead, and she felt like warm butter that began to melt in a warming pan. And now? She tugged on his shirt and tilted her head. Now I want us to really get to know each other. He stopped. That's it? Yes, why? Her gaze narrowed. He suspected something else, but she had no idea what he thought. Getting to know each other was on the top of her list now. I thought you were having second thoughts about marrying me. A huge sigh escaped her lips. Connor, you're sweet. I'd be foolish to walk away. The phone on his desk vibrated and rang. She let go of his shirt and stepped away. I'll leave you to answer your phone. He nodded and held up one finger. 1 hour. He then answered his phone and said, Mom, hi. She slipped out and closed the door gently so it didn't make any sounds. He needed to talk to his family too. The guards decided to follow her back to her room, but she ignored them. Once inside, she opened a book on her iPad. She stopped and blinked at the cursor on the 200th page marker and reread the text. Then she flipped to the next page and her stomach knotted. Once she was done, she opened her laptop on the bed and typed her review. Being shot at wakes someone up. I don't know if this author or book did justice for the hero's character growth, making the shot more than just an action-packed sequence for our hero to go through. Olivia stared at the screen and hoped she wasn't putting too much of herself in the review. A knock on her door distracted her attention. She hit save and stood. Connor walked in and stared at her legs. Are you ready? She bounced off the bed and fixed her dress, sending him an appreciative glance at him in his polo t-shirt and blue jeans. The casual look suited him better than his business suits. He offered her his arm and picked up a picnic basket that he had placed on a table near the door. This time they went up a different staircase, and once at the top they had an almost 360-degree view of the city below. He set a blanket on the floor and unpacked the basket. Olivia knelt down and helped him. He poured white wine for them both and handed her a glass while she stretched her legs. Yes, she said. I'm glad we're here. It's nice after the craziness earlier. They clinked glasses. My parents return tomorrow, Connor said. There will be ceremonies, including a formal introduction of you as my bride. Now that she intended to live in the present moment, Olivia wondered what her life would be like as the Queen of Montina. Would the people accept her? Would every day be like this one? The question snapped and she refused to try to answer because she made a solemn vow to herself to live in the moment. Olivia pushed the doubts from her mind. She sipped her wine, saying nothing. Once he had served with her brother in the U.S. Marines, this wasn't his normal either. Do you ever miss your old life before you were a prince? Every day, he said, and a moment later drained his glass. Once he put the glass down, she crossed her legs and stared at him. What do you miss the most? He stared back. Walking outside without guards and gossips who talk about everything I do or say, he said without hesitation. In New York, no one cared who I was. People walked past me without more than a passing glance. Anonymity came easy to a blogger. No one thought she was the pampered heiress of her father's oil company when she discussed books. Holding the pages, her blog, and her nickname, Librarian of the Page, meant she was no one special there except someone who read a book. So, if I was to ask who you were before all this ceremony, what would you have said? He winked at her and a smile grew on his face. I'd have flirted with you and said, why? Do you like what you see? Then he became serious again. If I said that to anyone here, I would make front-page news, and not in a good way. She opened a package of cheese and found the crackers. Putting together the finger food, she handed it to him. My father always said not to believe what you read in the newspapers. He ate from her hand instead of taking it from her. Good advice. Mikkel told me the newspapers are going to speculate that I chose to marry you because of your father's oil company. The prickle of his 5 o'clock shadow against her hand made her giggle. She fed him and then reached in to make another cracker and cheese. They would. Don't worry about that. Have you spoken to Gabe yet? You were worried about him, though I know he and all my family will be happy for us. I intended to. His voice had deepened. She handed him another cracker, which he ate from her hand again. She brushed his cheek. So, call now and I'll stay with you. Okay, I'll put him on speaker. He tugged his phone out from the back pocket of his jeans. A few minutes later, the phone clicked. Hello, Gabe? Connor? Her brother answered. Olivia placed her hand on his and squeezed. He smiled at her. Olivia's here with me. Hey, Liv, her brother said through the phone. She twisted and settled beside Conner, leaning against his shoulder. Hi, how is Megan? She's good. It was good that her brother was with Megan, and now their sister with James. They had all found happiness. Perhaps it was in the water, and she and Conner had a real shot. She smiled. Conner reached for her hand and held it close. So I'm calling because I want to ask your permission to marry Olivia. Her brother made a choking sound. Marry? You should probably ask our father, although he'll say yes. Olivia blushed. It was true her father had never once refused anything she ever wanted. Conner nodded as though he understood his duty. I felt like I betrayed your trust first. Gabe answered, Olivia is old enough to make up her own mind, and I'm smart enough to stay out of it. Perfect. She knew her brother was not a worry. She traced Conner's arm while she told her brother, We'll call or stop by to talk to Dad once the threat is cleared. Someone tried to kill me today. Did Maddox have friends helping him? Seriously? It's best to ask Navid, Gabe said. Her eyes narrowed. Who? Our new half-brother. He worked with Maddox. Let me find out, call James back, and then you. Thanks, Conner said. She shook her head as her entire body felt tight. No one told her, and she hadn't met this man. Once again, her family hadn't considered having a conversation, which was what had led her to books years ago. Wait, I have a new brother? I'd like to meet him. Gabe answered. You will. At Christmas. We'll plan a get-together with Mom and Dad. Bye, Gabe. Christmas was a long time from now. She'd size this Navid up and decide if he was using her family. But right now, she had to figure out Conner and his likes and tics. If he was her life now, then she needed to feel loved. Conner hung up the phone and she picked up their wine glasses and handed Conner's his. He pocketed his phone and she smiled. See? I told you he'd be cool. I still feel guilty. Conner's cheeks flushed. She reached and held his face in her hands. Because you're honorable. I like that. He winked at her. I hope you like more than that about me. Conner was the best man she had ever met. She thought as much the day he'd taken her to see her parents in the hospital, and being in his kingdom only cemented his dreaminess. She blinked as she hated that word, but she said, honest, honorable, and sweet. She said, Conner Udine, kiss me. He leaned forward and his lips met hers. Nothing stood in their way to being eternally happy, and there was nothing fantastic about that. Conner was all real and all hers. Forever. Chapter 8. The trumpets that blasted outside told Conner that his parents were now in residence. He adjusted his suit jacket, straightened his tie, and then stood from his desk. Today was the day he spoke to his parents at court about Olivia. He had every hope that this was simple, and they'd retire to the family dinner without ceremony. With luck, his mother saw that Olivia was the sweetest woman he'd ever met, and his life with her would be calm and peaceful. He left his study and went to his parents' rooms, the guards close behind him. Olivia was still in her room working on her book blog, so he was satisfied that she was safe for the moment. He knocked at their bedroom door, waited to be granted entrance, and let himself in. Queen Patricia, his mother, waved for a maid to leave immediately. Once the staff had disappeared, she walked over and hugged him. Conner. Mom, Dad. He hugged his mother and nodded to his father, who slipped his shoes off and sat on the edge of the bed. His mother squeezed him tight again. We came the second we heard the news, she said. We're very excited. Right. Olivia. Today they acted like a royal family. He lowered his head. We will meet you in the throne room. His mom let him go, but brushed her hand on his cheek until he looked into her blue eyes. You are serious, then? I'd not lie about something like this. He stood straighter. When he married Olivia, it would be for good. She was the only woman he'd met in a long time that he could see himself spending a life with. His dad stood and stretched his legs. We'll proceed right in to get the ceremony over with. I can't wait to get a good look at Olivia. Strange. Connor stopped and stared at his dad, confused. "You've met her before?" His mom went toward the closet and pulled out his red robe. "Yes, but not as your bride. We'll get dressed for the occasion and proceed immediately. Although today we're going to cut our court a bit short so we can spend some time alone tonight. And that includes your Olivia." "Sounds good." A quiet dinner with the family would let Olivia see that his family could be normal. He stepped away from his mother and headed toward the door. Once he was done, he walked faster with every step he took toward Olivia's quarters. She needed to be moved closer to him and his family, but she was so adamant about finishing her work that he had let it slide that morning. He knocked on her door and called out as he opened it. "Olivia." The moment he walked in and his pulse leapt. He saw her in a velvet blue dress with gold symbols that represented the nobility system, along with his house sigil. She turned toward him and the swish of the heavy velvet swept the floor. "Are you sure I should wear this dress?" she asked. "It's stiff." There were certain expectations to satisfy, and everything had to be perfect so no one questioned his parents' right to reign. He'd not be the reason anything happened to either of them. According to Mikkel, this is a design based on the last commoner who married into the royal family. Connor explained. "The symbols all have meaning." She lowered her gaze and blushed. "Well, do I look okay in this?" "You look stunning," he assured her, and walked further into the room. The air near her smelled of roses. She was perfect. He reached out and took her hands in his. She squeezed them. "Thank you." A moment later, he let go and offered his arm. She accepted it and allowed him to guide her into the corridor. He led her to his room to pick up the huge cross that he was supposed to wear. The moment they were in his room and away from the guards that followed them in the halls, he said, "My parents want to have a private dinner tonight and keep it more casual after today's formalities." "I'd prefer that too." She nodded. He found the gold cross and put it around his neck and centered the jeweled front for the audience to see. She reached up and fixed it perfect for him. His skin tingled from her simplest touch. "So, I will walk to my parents' throne and you will mingle with the court. Once we are all in position, I will come down the steps and collect you." She let go of his neck. "Connor?" "Yes?" He offered her his arm. "Do you love me?" He stopped walking and he felt blood rush to his brain. "What?" She stared intently into his brown eyes, and her stare made him feel like she was searching his soul. "I am getting my head out of the clouds," she explained. "I know you want to marry me, but why? I hoped it was love, but at first you just wanted to pretend." Maybe, but she'd not like that answer. His heart beat faster and his mind raced. Someone outside the door knocked. It was time to go. He offered his arm again. "Now is not a good time. Can we talk after?" "Sure," she said, but she seemed disappointed because she glanced at the floor while she followed. In the halls, they were silent. Connor didn't know how to tell her that she was the only woman he wanted without the word love, but if he said it, then he needed to mean it. Heart and soul. Her footsteps were slower, but outside the royal throne room, the trumpets announced his arrival. As the doors opened, Connor led her into the open court. Across the room, he saw Baron Veneri and Charlotte Vonivers, whose heads were bent together in conversation across the room until silence fell. He led Olivia to the center and bowed to his parents. When the king lifted his hand to bid him approach, Connor let Olivia's arm go. "Wait here," he whispered. "Okay." She glanced around the room, her face whiter than normal. It reminded him of the first time he had to go through this ceremony and people bowed to him. He had been so confused and lost then, but in time he had grown used to this world. Olivia reminded him of a sweeter version of home. He walked up the steps until he reached his parents' thrones and kept his head down while he bowed to them. "Your Majesty, Your Majesty." His dad motioned for him to straighten. "Your Royal Highness, do you have business in this court?" The sooner they finished this, the sooner they all sat together like a normal family. He lowered his head. "I'm here to formally present Miss Hawke as my intended and seek your permission to marry." His father waved again. "Present her to us for inspection." Connor bowed and descended the stairs. As the prince, he had the privilege of showing them his back, but he was the only one. When he brought Olivia back down the stairs, he would have to remember to go backward. As he returned to her side, he felt her tremble. He placed his hand on the small of her back to lead her forward and spoke low in her ear. "You're white as a ghost. When you were talking to your parents, Baron Veneri came and whispered to me." She whispered back. Conner glanced over his shoulder. The Baron must have told her about his threat. "Just now?" She lifted her chin and took a deep breath, but she did not look at him. "Yes, we'll talk after. Let's finish this." He took her arm and brought her up the stairs. At the top, he kept his head down and said, "Your Majesties, may I present Miss Olivia Hawke?" This time, his dad motioned to his mom, Patricia, who said, "She is lovely. Both His Majesty and myself approve of your choice, Royal Highness. We look forward to this wedding with pride and hope for the future." Done. The nobility and the press had their moments. Conner walked backward down the stairs, helped Olivia to do the same, and prayed he didn't trip while he held her to ensure she could walk in her floor-length gown. Once they were done, he led her toward the doors. Again, trumpets blared as they left the court hand in hand. Conner kept going and led her straight back to his room for a moment of privacy. When they were alone, she took a step back and crossed her arms. He reached out to touch her, but she shifted away. "Olivia." She shook her head and met his gaze. "No, there is nothing to say. You want to marry me so your parents don't lose their crowns." Perhaps at first, but everything changed on their engagement night. "That was why I asked you to pretend." Her brow furrowed and she shook her head. "Then what changed?" she demanded. "It can't have been because I was a virgin. That is ridiculous." She dropped her clenched hands to her sides. "Just so you know, I waited because I wanted to choose the guy, not because I'm some feudal creature that should be judged based on medieval standards of chastity." He reached to hold her, but she picked up the floor-length dress and practically ran toward the door. "Olivia, wait." She burst into the corridor, unconcerned by the guards or whoever else might listen to every word. "I won't rip the dress, but I need to get out of this. It's time I go home." She stormed away toward her room, but Conner was right behind her. "What about the threat against your life?" She flung open her door. He followed her inside and closed it in an effort to preserve some shred of privacy. "I'll take my chances," she said. "I told you getting shot made me think things through, and I hope one day I can marry for love." Love. Conner had never thought about truly being in love and spending his life with anyone, but he couldn't imagine losing her now. His heart raced. "Change," he ordered. "I'll wait outside the door." As he opened the door to slip out, she called after him. "It's probably better that you go. I don't want to disappoint you." The last thing she'd ever do was disappoint him. Conner paused in the doorway. "I'll give you 15 minutes to change, and then I'm coming inside. Suit yourself." She waved him away and then called in a maid to help her undress. If he lost her, it would be because he hadn't tried. He stared at her while the maid helped her unlace her dress. "Olivia, don't judge me based on what others have said. Please hear me out. 15 minutes, then come in. I need to cool down." He stepped outside and took a deep breath. He had one chance and he couldn't ruin it. Olivia was the woman he wanted and he wouldn't lose her now. Chapter 9. Olivia's heartbeat was so loud that for a few minutes it drowned out all other sound. Her ears throbbed. If Conner married her simply to save his parents' thrones, she knew her heart would shrink a little each day for the rest of her life. She wrapped her arms around herself so she would not be trembling when he returned to her bedroom. She tried to stand tall, to have some pride as he entered again, and ignored the massive windows or afternoon sun that shone onto the white sheets of her four-poster bed. Whatever the cost, it was important that she be true to herself first of all. Conner approached and her body ached for him, making it known how difficult it would be to resist him, even though she knew she should. She looked down at her feet, deliberately avoiding his gaze. "Conner, earlier I asked you if you loved me." "I don't want to lie to you," he said, and she saw that his black leather shoes had taken a step closer. She glanced up and looked at him with a new determination. His gray pants, white shirt, and blue velvet coat that held his gold cross around his neck all just made him even more handsome. Which wasn't fair. No matter how attractive he was, she couldn't marry him without love. Not with how she felt. Her throat tightened. Then we shouldn't get married. He reached for her, but she forbade her body to respond. Olivia, my parents might lose their crowns if I don't marry, and you're the only woman I actually want. Want and love are not the same thing. She stepped out of reach and walked away toward the window. The green lawn of the castle grounds had a beautiful fountain that helped to calm her. Her blog and books had taught her that she couldn't live in hope that he might one day love her. I'm sure you can find another woman to marry, even on short notice. Not one I want. The gravity in his voice made her crave his kiss so much that her lips tingled. She stared at the fountain and told herself to be calm. Why do you want to marry me? At first you wanted to lie, for our union to be a lie. Connor at first made a guttural sound like he fought for his voice, and then he said, "Everything changed for me that night." No. She swallowed and tried to think. Perhaps she seemed panicked and crazy, but she had read countless books about being a naive, stupid virgin, and she had no desire to be a stereotype when she knew that was not true. Scarlett would never care about what anyone thought. She put her own value on herself. Olivia needed to the same. She turned and confronted him. He was nothing like the unfeeling prince she had just pictured in her mind's eye. He was gorgeous, sexy, and his gaze beamed with warmth and kindness. Why? She asked caustically. Because we made love? I have to stop being stupid, Connor. Love is supposed to be a lifelong commitment. You get me when no one else does. Get. Her heart lifted. Perhaps he was in love, but she shouldn't let that change her. She narrowed her gaze. What does that mean to you? It means that I feel comfortable with you. I don't have to be the prince all the time. To you, I'm me, Connor. It was almost perfect. She desperately wanted to believe him. Her heart was throbbing in her ears again, and she looked away. That's sweet. I just don't want to live my life without being with someone who totally loves me and looks forward to coming home to me. She had been named after the actress who played Melanie Hamilton in Gone with the Wind, and in that book, Melanie never once doubted that Ashley loved her. She was patient and kind and never doubted her friends. Olivia pictured herself as sweet, but no one was that kind and forgiving in real life, were they? His shoes came into view again. Cupping her chin, he gently forced her to meet his gaze. When she complied, he massaged her cheek. Don't be impulsive like this, he pleaded. I understand that the bullet scared you, but don't put your life on the line or jeopardize any future we might have because you don't know what to do. Her entire body froze. He might have seen straight through to her soul. I'm not, she insisted. I need to know if you love me. He sighed and kept his voice low, the even tone making her pay attention to every word. I need time, he said slowly. But don't be reckless and destroy everything in your path because you're afraid. I'm not afraid. She pouted as her body grew warmer. The cold trembling inside her dissipated as if she had walked into the sun. Perhaps she could try and open her heart like she wanted to whenever she was near him. Then tell me why you feel the need to rush. Because no other word formed in her mind or on her lips. She couldn't answer honestly, and she reached up and grabbed hold of his hand that held her face. She had a question. Why didn't you tell me about the possibility that your parents could lose the crown? His arms went lowered to her shoulders and he held her closer. The feel of being in his embrace and strength made her stand stronger. I intended to, but when I was with you, my mind was always on you and not my parents. Perhaps she wasn't thinking straight because of the bullet. She nodded. Veneri made it seem like you were lying because of a dark secret. The only secret I have is how close I came to dying that day with your brother and the rest of my troop. When the bomb exploded near us, I thought we were done and this was the end. He understood. Good. The sense of belonging returned and blossomed inside her chest. Like when I was shot. Don't let the adrenaline of that moment send you into a tailspin. Again, she nodded and met his stare. Conner clearly saw through her, which was good. Okay, she agreed. I'll try to invoke patience. Apparently relived, he placed both of his hands on her shoulders and held her closer. Does that mean you're not going to storm out of the castle? In his arms, nothing else mattered. Olivia traced his hard body with her hands before resting them on his hips. I'll stay, she promised. And hopefully we'll find who shot me. If he truly loved her, then she would stay forever. But she couldn't run from him now. She'd ruin his life and his family. Somehow she had to help. She closed her eyes and let herself be still. Conner swayed and rocked her. Is that the only reason? No. She glanced up into his eyes and felt her entire body grow warmer. She never blinked. I was being pushy and unreasonable when I asked if you loved me. I freaked out when Veneri told me that you didn't. When I look at you, I feel home. He took a step toward her bed. We have a few hours before we meet my parents. What do you have in mind? She asked, a huge grin on her face. He turned, his hand slipping to the small of her back while he took another step. You, me, that bed of yours. She nodded and stepped out of her high heels. This is better than my earlier plan. Agreed, he said, and kicked his shoes onto the floor as well. They both quickly unbuttoned and unzipped all of their clothes and threw them in a pile on the floor. Naked, she sat on the bed and waited for him. His broad chest and perfect body almost made her swoon, and he did not disappoint. A moment later, he claimed her lips in a kiss and pressed her down on the bed, his hand never losing its connection with hers. Complete was the only word that described how she felt in his arms. With Conner, she felt alive and powerful. This couldn't be a mistake. She loved him. Chapter 10. Olivia felt a surge of energy that rushed through her as she applied her blue eyeshadow on her lids. Every cell in her entire body felt alive because she spent the afternoon in bed with Conner. She fixed her light blue, knee-length skirt, then turned a steady hand to applying her makeup. Nothing else mattered, except tonight she wanted to impress his family. She checked the color and then wiped off some of the blue and added beige to lighten the color. A knock sounded on the bathroom door. Conner called into the bathroom. Are you ready? In a minute, she answered and focused on her eyes. She had to be picture perfect for his parents. Your phone is ringing. Can you get it? I'll just be a moment in here. She frowned slightly, realizing the call must her family. For a second, she was pleased before she realized if it wasn't important, her family wouldn't call her. She finished her eyes quickly and cracked open the door. Gabe, Conner answered. She'll be out in a minute. She checked herself in the mirror and decided she was ready. She took one more glance at herself and opened the door. It's my brother? He nodded. Let me put you on speaker, he told Gabe and pressed the button on his phone. Please tell Olivia what you just said. Liv, I spoke to Navid. And? One day she'd like to meet this new brother of hers, but first she wanted to settle her life with Conner and keep her head on her shoulders. The meeting could wait until Christmas. In a blink, she was listening to the conversation again. He said to watch out for Charlotte Vonivers, Gabe warned. She dated Maddox and knows how to handle various weapons. Megan confirmed that she saw Charlotte around once in a while. Olivia's face went white. She had stood next to Miss Vonivers earlier at the ceremony as the Baron told her all about how Conner didn't love her. Her throat tightened. Conner's face reddened and he lowered his head. She wanted to marry me. What? Olivia's voice went up an octave. Conner crossed his arms and refused to meet her gaze. Right after I asked Olivia, she was waiting for me in my study and offered to be my bride. I told her to leave. I will alert the guards immediately. Perhaps the plan was to get her out of the way all along. Olivia reached out and pressed her palm on Conner's hip. He lowered his arms. Thanks, Gabe. We have to go to dinner with his parents. You sound happy, Liv, her brother said. Talk to you later. Without a chance to say goodbye, Gabe abruptly ended the call. Conner put his phone in his back pocket and met her stare. So, he said grimly. We know who to protect you from. Right. At least she knew who she couldn't trust. She slipped her arm through Connor's and walked beside him into the corridor. The guards surrounded them as they made their way to the family quarters. As they walked into the dining room, they froze. At the table, Charlotte Vonnevar sat across from the Queen and to the left of the King. Olivia squeezed Connor's arm. She's here? At the family dinner? Connor stared at Charlotte. Mom? Dad? I thought tonight was just for family. His mother blinked, but then gazed at her with concern in her gaze while she said, Charlotte is telling us that your engagement to Olivia is fake and meant to protect us. Connor, we'd never want you to sacrifice yourself for us. Connor snapped his fingers and said, Guards, please arrest Ms. Vonnevar. I'll join you for questioning her shortly. Yes, Your Highness, the first guard said. The King and Queen rose to their feet as the guards surrounded Charlotte and took her into custody. As she was taken out of the room, Charlotte laughed. Connor, what's going on? His mother demanded. She tried to kill Olivia, my fiancée, yesterday. He kept his hand on the small of Olivia's back to keep her close. His mother's gaze darted between the two of them, her mouth never quite closing. Are you serious? Deadly. Connor removed his hand from her back and excused himself. I need to go question her. Olivia reached out and grabbed his arm. I'm going with you. No, I need you to stay here where you're safe. He said fast and in a tone that commanded authority. This was her life too. You had her arrested and I want to talk to her too, she insisted. He spoke softly. Olivia, just give me a few minutes. She couldn't refuse him, especially not when he asked like that. Olivia affectionately brushed her hand against his cheek. Be safe, she said. I love you. I'll be back soon, he promised and slipped out of her arms. If he loved her, then nothing else mattered. His absence made her feel cold. She rubbed the goosebumps that grew on her arms and stared at the door. The Queen said, It's nice to see how much my son loves you, Olivia. Please sit and eat and call me Patricia. In a few minutes, you may follow him and then you've kept your promise. It was good advice, but she'd not call the Queen Patricia, not yet. Olivia turned and sat in the seat Charlotte had just vacated, not without a quiet feeling of being completely justified. She stared at the plate of food that was placed in front of her and watched as another waiter poured a glass of wine. Too agitated to touch food, she hugged her stomach. I don't think I can eat anything. The Queen smiled and sipped her wine. Once she was done, she asked, What is it about my son that you love? Of course, his mother would be curious, and her rank gave her more authority to ask than she might have had otherwise. Olivia felt the blood rushing back into her face that had been cold, and she felt herself relax. She met his mother's gaze and let go of her waist. Connor is steadfast, patient, kind, and honorable. I often wonder what he sees in me. I'm shy, introverted, and, as I recently discovered, impulsive. So, you're not after his future crown. His mother nodded at her and shared a significant look with the King. This time, Olivia picked up her glass but kept her lashes lowered. If she married Connor like they had planned, then she needed his mother to like her. There was no way she'd ever be a princess if she didn't get help. I'd probably like life better if he didn't have that, but he clearly loves his country. She sipped experimentally. This wine is really sweet but dry. The Queen put her glass down and frowned. I thought it was just dry. The world blurred and everything around her flew past even while time seemed to slow. Suddenly, she couldn't sit straight and had to lean forward. My head is spinning. Olivia! She heard the Queen scream as if from a distance and she knew she was falling, but she never seemed to reach the ground. She was so slow. She moved just a little and had to fight to keep her eyes open. Again, like she was miles away, she heard the Queen command, "Get the doctor!" What's wrong with me? She coughed and her throat became bitter. Patricia patted her hand and Olivia heard distant footsteps. I think you were poisoned. We never should have asked you to sit. Charlotte had just been there. You didn't know? Olivia said, and tried to squeeze her hand, but she didn't quite have the strength because her entire body felt like she moved slower than molasses. His parents hovered over her and stared down at her like she was a sick child that needed to get to the hospital. Olivia, keep talking, the Queen repeated. Tell me about your parents. Talk, right. Mom, Dad, they both love me. They are good people. She was getting very tired. If she could only close her eyes for a minute, she'd feel better, but she heard the mum and knew she should keep talking. Olivia let out a breath. My brother said I have a new brother I'd never heard of before, but it's hard to imagine that my parents were with anyone else. Somehow his mother's face transformed itself into the brown hair and brown eyes of the man she loved. She swallowed, and it felt like bile rose in her throat. Conner. His name came out in a whisper. Where is the doctor? Conner barked at someone she couldn't see. If she looked, she'd waste energy, and she was tired. Another man knelt in front of her, his piercing blue eyes disconcerting. I need access. Clear away. Quickly. The blue-eyed man took out a needle and a vial. It didn't matter what he did if she could sleep for a little while. She needed to close her eyes now. What is it? Conner demanded. The doctor pushed the needle into her vein. Since you believe the poison was ingested, it's likely one of 6 common substances, he explained. This counteracts 2 of them. Almost instantly, the need to vomit grew inside her. Her stomach felt like it twisted. Conner's face became darker from shadows while her stomach twisted. Tears formed in her eyes. He asked the doctor, What if it's one of the others? Then we'll try something else, he said, and his eyes assessed her like he could see inside her. Her skin felt dewy and yucky. Again, the need to let out whatever was inside her grew. She heaved. I don't feel well. If you need to retch, it's for the best. The cold, clinical eyes of the doctor shifted to a nearby metal bowl. This was not how I wanted to meet your parents, Olivia moaned as she clutched the bowl. Then her worst nightmare on how to meet her possible future in-laws played out like a bad movie. She needed the metal bowl, and she had no idea for how long she waited on the floor. Don't worry about it. She heard Conner as he gently held her hair away from her face but refused to look at him. Her fairy tale wasn't supposed to end this way. There was no way they'd ever want to see her ever again. And she wasn't sure she could marry Conner now. Chapter 11. Olivia's lips were dry and parched. She tried to lick them, but her tongue still tasted horrible. She sat and threw off some of the stifling bedding. Glancing around, she realized she was in her room in the castle. The birds tweeted outside, and she took a deep breath, listening to nature outside. Apparently, the bluebird near her window meant she was still alive as she could hear its song. She slipped her legs over the edge of the bed and stared at the blue wall and the arched doorway. A second later, there was a knock, and Conner slipped inside with a tray of food. He placed it on the table near the door. You're awake. She felt heat rising into her cheeks and face as he walked toward her. She lowered her gaze. Yes. Did I really throw up on the floor at your family's royal table? Thankfully, you released most of the poison, he said and sat beside her. Some might still be in your bloodstream, so it's best to eat something if you can stomach it. Over his shoulder, she saw the sunlight glinting brilliantly on the morning dew. Everything here was picture perfect, except her. She must have been here all night. She massaged her neck and throat. Poison? Charlotte must have put something on your glass, he said, reaching for her hand. This was unreal. She blinked and leaned against his strong shoulder. It didn't make sense. I saw the steward pour the wine myself. His fingers interlaced with hers and kept her steady and calm. Did he bring you a new glass? Olivia's head throbbed as she tried to recall the moment, and she squeezed her eyes closed. I don't remember. Conner lowered his voice, and somehow the steadiness of his tone relaxed her. She sat straighter. He said he didn't, and that she tampered with the glass. He took a deep breath. Mikkel is ensuring that the staff follow all the 16th century royal table protocols to prevent poisoning now. Wow. images jarred from being at the family dinner. She had no words, but she opened her eyes. I shouldn't have sat there. Charlotte admitted to poisoning you, he said, while he placed his hand on her back and scooted closer. He smelled like home. She swallowed, happy that her throat didn't hurt anymore. Why did she do that? She wanted to be the queen, he said simply. She's been working with Veneri to either steal the crown from my parents or marry me. She didn't care which. It made no sense. Everything started because Maddox shot at her parents. Olivia shook her head. I thought she used to date Maddox, the guy who shot my parents. Conner nodded. Now, that's the kicker. She's in love with him, and all of this was also an effort to please him. Wow. Her eyes widened. That is a strange definition of love. Yeah. That's the second time you've said yeah instead of yes. My American accent comes out near you. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and the word love stirred in the air without either of them saying anything else. Time helped her body to relax, but then her mind sharpened again. She turned and stared at Conner. Again, she wondered how he felt. She took a deep breath. So, now that you have found out about all the lies and manipulations, you're off the hook. We don't have to get married. He brushed her hair out of her face again. Don't think about that right now. The more important question is, how do you feel? Not good. He didn't tell her anything. Suddenly restless, Olivia clambered out of bed. Without warning, she swayed but held her stomach where it felt like rocks now grew until she became sure of her step. I'm okay, but I'd like to talk more if you'll give me 2 minutes to freshen up. Can you stand on your own? Conner stood and stared at her as though she might fall down. She took a step forward and shrugged her shoulders. Seems so. I'll wait. He hovered close by, but she walked steadily unaided. When she made it to the door of the bathroom, he said, You seem healthy. I'm fine, she said, and slipped inside the bathroom, closing the door behind her. She heard what must be the maid who worked with a hum in her voice and set the food tray on her small table while she cleaned. When she was sure her breath and skin had been thoroughly cleansed and didn't remind her of yesterday's events, she came out and saw the breakfast he had set for her. He stood near the huge pile of toast he set in the middle. No maid was in sight. Conner held the chair for her before seating himself beside her. I've been the worst bodyguard for you, he apologized. Since coming into my home, you've been shot at and poisoned. She sipped the delicious and soothing hot chocolate that went down her throat like a coating filled with sugar and warm, heated donuts. I'm fine. You didn't do either of those things, and now that we've exposed those who did and stopped it, we're good. She put her cup down and reached for a piece of toast. What he said next stopped her cold. Earlier, you said you loved me. Now he wanted to talk about it? Her face felt flushed, but she deftly placed the toast on her plate and put her hands in her lap, her appetite suddenly gone. Oh, yeah, I did. How had she sounded so casual? Her insides were on pins and needles. He scooted the butter closer to her plate and leaned toward her. When you were shot, he said, I was terrified that someone might steal you away from me. Then when I saw you lying on the floor with your skin turning green, her lips parted. That wasn't good. She felt her insides tremble that he'd seen her looking that awful. Doesn't matter that my skin was green. You were there for me. Conner and poured himself a cup of coffee. You looked so sick and you were shaking uncontrollably. She straightened her shirt and buttered her toast to look busy. I don't want to think about how badly I looked, and you shouldn't let it bother you. I'm fine now. The moment she put it in her lips, the bread dissolved into a delicious taste that none of the breads at home did. She licked her lips and wiped her mouth with her napkin. That's not the point, he said impatiently. What is? She asked, and risked a glance into his eyes. In all this time, I realized I love you, Conner finally admitted. And a huge part of me wants to send you packing back to Miami where you'll be safe. Wait, he loved her? Olivia's heart thundered in her chest. This was amazing. She felt like she had fireworks that exploded in her stomach and made her want to jump for joy. But instead, she sat on her hands. "And your other half wants to do what with me?" He leaned close again. "The rest wants nothing more than to finally get you moved out of this room and into mine, which we'd share for the rest of our lives as husband and wife." This time, she couldn't stop herself. Olivia threw her arms around his neck and curled herself into his lap. "You want to make the engagement work?" "If you'll have me." Everything was amazing, and everything around them took on an almost magical color. He loved her and wanted to marry her for real. Nothing else mattered, and the world was beautiful. She turned toward him and felt his breath on her skin. "Connor, I love you, and I can't wait to be your bride." He traced the side of her face. "My bride will also be a princess." "Got it, and I hope your people like me." She'd been shot at and poisoned so she could handle being a princess. As long as they were together, nothing else mattered. She kissed his cheek and got up from his lap. Once she settled back in her seat, she picked up another piece of toast. "Can we visit my parents at Christmas and meet my new brother? I want to know if I can trust him and whether my father should let him into our home." "I don't think that's up to you, but we can protect them if they need it." Connor nodded. "Of course, we'll have duties here too." "True. He might be the best guy. And from what I understand, Scarlett likes him. But then she usually likes everyone." They finished the rest of the breakfast. Once she was done, she waited in her seat for him to finish. The moment he wiped his lips with his napkin, she stood and tugged on his arm. "Tell me you love me again." "I love you, Olivia," he said with a gleam in his eyes that melted her, and he followed as she led him toward the bed. She tugged him on top of her, sighed, and wrapped herself in his arms. "And I love you too, Connor." Then his lips met hers and the world disappeared. For once, she had everything she ever wanted. Connor was the best man she might ever imagine, and she imagined quite a bit, all the time. Thank you for reading. I hope you enjoyed Connor and Olivia's story as I did. The next story in the series is Cousin Roxy and Harry, who's been protecting the parents and tempting Harry. Or maybe you're wanting the continuation of danger and romance in the Brothers in Revenge drama, where the Hawks continue to make appearances. The prequel novella Irresistibly Lost is available for free. I never thought the man who jilted me at the altar would come back to me. Or check out the preview below for Secret Cinderella and order your copy now. About the author USA Today. Best-selling author Victoria Pinder grew up in Irish Catholic Boston, then moved to Miami. Eventually found that writing is her passion. She always wrote stories to entertain herself. Her parents are practical-minded people demanding a job, but when she sat down to see what she enjoyed doing, writing became obvious. Visit my website and download a free novel, www.victoriapinder.com, victoriapinder.com, Facebook X, Twitter, Instagram.